Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Marnina Miller, and I am the Community Outreach Coordinator at Southern AIDS Coalition, where we envision a better South for people living with HIV, one where every person has access to high quality care and essential support services free from stigma and discrimination. We envision a South where everyone understands their risk for HIV transmissions, receives routine screening, and has access to a full range of prevention, intervention, and harm reduction services. Today is National Women and Girls HIV/AIDS Awareness Day. And this evening, you will hear from three dynamic young women of color leading the fight to help end the HIV epidemic in the Deep South. Y'all know, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, late stage HIV is one of the top 10 causes of death in women between the ages of 20 to 44 years old. I really wanted this community discussion to help amplify the voices of young women of color who live in the intersections of residing in the Deep South while simultaneously working to help end the HIV epidemic. I'm going to let each of my panelists introduce themselves with their name, pronouns, and what HIV organizations that they represent. And I also want them to tell us what grounds them in this work. And I'm going to start to my far left with Aisha.
Hi, everyone. As it's already been stated, my name is Aisha Scott. My pronouns are she and her. I represent Positive Support, Positive Women's Network, and also the Well Project. And what keeps me grounded in this work is just remembering where I was and the support and network and sisterhood that I needed to be where I am today to thrive. So that's what keeps me grounded in the work. That's what keeps me going. And that's what keeps me committed. My sisters and brothers living with HIV.
Marissa?
Sorry, I had to find the unmute button. So as Marnina said, my name is Marissa Gonzalez. I live here in the Southwest Florida part of Florida. So I'm in Fort Myers, Florida. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And what really grounds me in this work, very similar to Aisha, is just knowing that I can be a voice for other individuals that are living with HIV, but also being a voice for individuals who are silently living with HIV and feel that they can't speak up because of whether it's internalized stigmas or external stigmas. And my associations are the Well Project, the McGregor Clinic, which is a local clinic here in the Fort Myers area, and Youth Across Borders.
And last but not least, Kayla.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kayla Quimbley. My pronouns are she and her. The organizations that I am affiliated with are Advocates for Youth and PACHA, which is the Presidential Advisory Council on HIV and AIDS. And what keeps me grounded in this work is that I guess growing up, I didn't see many people like me, in a public platform. And so just being that person for other people to be inspired by and to not be scared to use their voices and own who they are, on their status. That's what keeps me grounded in this work.
And so the title of this program is HerStory, HerWay. Can each of you tell us how you got started working in the HIV and AIDS advocacy arena? And I'm going to start with you, Marissa, on this one.
So the way that I got started is actually kind of ironic. I was not ready to be public with my status. So here locally, I'm the president for the Youth Services Coalition. So I initially started advocacy with the premise of wearing that hat and spreading awareness for youth in our community. As I started to get more comfortable with living with HIV is when I decided to go public with my status. But essentially getting started was very behind the scenes, but still wanting to raise awareness while I was still learning about the condition and kind of finding myself in what it meant to live with it.
Thank you for that. Aisha?
Well, I technically, I don't know if I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for my situation. Very grateful for it now and what it has brought to my life. So, a negative experience of me being ousted on Twitter publicly, I've been able to kind of take my power back. Now, I really took it back initially because at that point when it was shared on Twitter, I had already been going through my own self stigma. I had already been harming myself, really. So at that point, when that person wrote it, I was already at a place where I was just like over it. And when it was said, I just replied back, okay, I am, next topic. And that went viral, and here I am today. So I won't necessarily say that it would have been my story, but I guess it is my story, my way in the end. But that's really how I got started in advocacy. And for me, it was just about ownership. So it didn't necessarily even really start out about other folks because at that point I was in my own evolution. And for me, a big part of that was just owning my status so that I can move forward and be the best version of myself because that is what had been weighing me down for a while. I couldn't even grow. And I had a daughter. So that was definitely my growth moment. And that's how I got into this work.
Thank you for sharing. And last but not least, Kayla, how did you get started in this HIV advocacy work?
So the way I got started in this work was kind of like, I guess, fated, you could say, because for a long time I had been having this feeling like I really wanted to advocate about HIV just because I wanted to educate people. I grew up in the rural South, so it's a lot of stigma around HIV. So being in school, you hear people making jokes and they saying this and they saying that, but this is your everyday life. This is your livelihood that people joking around about and stuff like that. So anyways, one summer I went to this summer camp and I'm not going to say the name of it, but it's summer camp for young people living with HIV or who have been impacted by it. And they were having a poetry contest. And the poetry contest was you had to write about HIV and AIDS. And so I felt like that was the perfect moment for me to just like tell my experience, what it's been like being a Black girl living with HIV. And so I did that poem, and the next day they're like, yeah, so this is a contest. You're going to be going up against like 5 people from 5 different states, but we would need to put this on social media. So it will be out there for everybody, which I was not ready for that. I wasn't expecting it, but it had been, well, I'm not going to say I wasn't ready for it, but I was not expecting it because that was like me basically putting my whole story out for the world to see for the first time, like, because I was raised that, it was a secret. And so once I did that poem, and I won the contest, it got the poem went viral. And so that's kind of how I became public with my status. And that's kind of what started me with the work and doing advocacy. And it just opened up a lot of different doors for me to be able to use my voice in order to educate other people. So that's kind of what got me started in this work.
Oh, that's a cool way to come out, though. Being able
Yeah.
to yourself with the poetry, that's cool.
Thank
So,
you.
each of you have stated how you're openly living with HIV. And when people think of the term long term survivor, most of us immediately think of somebody that's 50, 60, 70 years old, someone who has been in the fight to end the epidemic for a very long time. But I know that we have some long term survivors on this panel. I would love to know what you all wish people knew about being a young woman that's also a long-term survivor that's living with HIV. And I'm gonna start off with Aisha on this one.
For me personally, what I wish folks knew about being a long term survivor is that honestly, for me, it really matters more so saying it to other folks living with HIV because it seems like being a long term survivor for many is I don't I don't even know how to phrase what I want to say without being a little bit picky. But I guess for some folk, some terms They don't feel fit. And sometimes when they look at people that were born with HIV who didn't actually grow up during the time, where they were adults and experiencing uh, the epidemic, I don't think they really recognized for us that we were also a part of that epidemic, and we lost friends, we lost family, some of us lost our parents, and then some of us didn't even have no understanding of to why. And I know even for me, when it came to me, that I actually was HIV positive, I had already heard it several times, even from family, but about my mom, but not always concrete. Nothing that made me actually know for certain that she was living with it or that I was either, but you would always hear those little things. But back to the point I was making, for like I said, for a lot of folks, they really just feel like, that term is for people who were older adults, but for people that are young like us, we have a lot of uncertainties when it comes to aging with HIV, especially when it comes to, what's going on with the insides of our bodies. What does it mean for us when we're having kidney and liver functions as people at 50 and 60 years old? So how dare you tell me I'm not a long-term survivor? I've been through those different medications just as anyone else. Had problems with medication adherence, and again, have lost people myself and have experienced just a lot of trauma when it comes to HIV. So, what I just want everybody to know is, it's no competition. We're all HIV positive at the end of the day. And that's really it.
Did you have to, when you were younger, did you take a lot of meds and things like that?
Yes, I actually did. I took a lot of different meds. I will always become resistant to my medications because I never took them serious. Number one, I didn't even know why I was taking them. And then when I was given a reason, by that time, I wasn't dumb. Like, you're telling me I have sickle cell like my brother, but we got different meds. Why my stuff look different from his? So, you don't see I guess for me personally, I didn't see the reason for really taking them because nobody was giving me a reason to. It was just take these. And I would do something so stupid like put them in my mouth and let them sit and then spit it out, which was worse than actually taking the medication. So God bless me.
Because medicine is nasty when it starts dissolving. I don't care what it is. It could be an Advil. Once it starts melting, it's a wrap.
Yeah. So it's the silliest thing ever.
Oh, wow. So, Kayla, tell me how it feels to be a long-term survivor.
I think that the tone, God, the term long-term survivor. I had this discussion maybe like a few weeks to a month or so ago about being a long-term survivor and being a young person, and I don't know. I guess our struggles are the same but different in a sense because we come from two different time frames, and so I was literally just over here thinking about it, but I'm trying to see where I'm about to go with this particular phrase. Or I guess I said I don't feel like I'm a long-term survivor. Essentially, I feel like I'm still conquering HIV because there are things that are still like I'm a conqueror. You feel what I'm saying? Because we haven't overcome it yet. This is still our everyday life, which, and I said for some people, for that term, it might, resonate with them, and that's okay. But for me, every day HIV is still actively a part of my life. Like Aisha was saying, like I'm still constantly trying to figure out what's going on with my body. And for medications that we take, it affects different parts of our organs. So when I hear the term, it's like I don't attach it to myself because I'm 23, so I've been living with it my whole life, but I'm still overcoming having it be an integral part in my livelihood. So when it comes down to that and people feeling a type of way, everybody has the right to their opinion, so to each their own. But for me, that's how I personally feel about the term. I don't know. I don't think that was the question you were asking me, but those are my sentiments on it.
No, that's perfectly fine because we all can identify the ways in which we want to identify. I know some people don't like the term HIV. They rather be called living with AIDS because they received their HIV diagnosis when they had an AIDS diagnosis. And so there are people that like to say that, and I prefer to myself as a person living with HIV. So it's completely understandable that that doesn't identify with you and you don't resonate with it.
Yeah.
So we won't, you know what I mean? So we won't
Yeah.
even consider you, in that term. But yeah, I definitely understand what you're saying because your struggles are different. Go
Right.
ahead, Aisha.
Can I just make a point to what Kayla was saying? Well, not a point, but also just an addition, rather, that I also feel that way, but only because I don't feel like I'm included in any of the information, knowledge, or research when it's, concerning long-term survivors. Because anytime you see any information where it concerns long-term survivors, it's looking at a population that's not mine, demographic that's not mine. So, and that's for me why it doesn't, but I do recognize and acknowledge the term, because other folks use it, but I don't fight over it, and I don't even see what's the fight over it.
Do y'all see any spaces where folks through vertical transmission, do you see any spaces like advocacy spaces for folks that were vertically receive vertical transmission?
Aisha, me personally, other than like I said, the camp that I went to, that was the space for me to get away every year. But other than that, like a public platform, no, I think, and being 23 now, I think within the last year or so, it's the first time that I've actually, like, Aisha is one person and a few other people that I've actually met and spoken with via social media that did receive vertical transmission, which is wild, because more of us than I ever thought that it was. So me personally, no, I don't know of many. Do you, Aisha?
I actually know a lot of people living with HIV that were born HIV positive. And that's mainly because I went to camps as a youth. I actually went to camps starting at about 6 up until like 16. So I went to camps for quite some time. And throughout that time, I would meet a lot of friends. And that's why even when I was mentioned earlier, like about losing people, that's where I would experience a lot of my loss, and even still not understanding it, because at the camp I went to, they didn't disclose to us. And they also had like an academy for the kids that did know their status, and they would actually coach them on how not to share information even prior to us leaving for this trip. And mind you, just these trips every summer would be sponsored by organizations, individuals who would just pour money into the Children's Diagnostic and Treatment Center at the time. And we would go on these trips, and every summer, sometimes I would go to 2, maybe 3 camps. It just depends. So it was 2 in Orlando, 1 in Texas. And I got an opportunity to meet a lot. A lot of the people that I know living with HIV are not, and that were born with it, are not public with their status, and I respect them. I respect their privacy. We spend time together. I've also shared spaces with them at conferences or at, I guess, at retreats, what you would call them, for people living with HIV, but they're not public with their status. All of them thriving, living great lives, great jobs, and I'm so proud of that. And I always tell them, you do not have to be public to live progressively and lead the life that you want to live.
Thank you so much for that. It seems like we definitely need to make more spaces for folks that have received vertical transmissions, because I haven't seen any, and it's not looking like it's any a lot of on the advocacy market. So I would love to see some things like that. So I'm going to pass this over to Marissa. We all do this work in such innovative ways. How has social media impacted your work? Because I see you shining on social media. So I want to know, how has social media impacted your work around HIV and AIDS?
Well, thank you for that. First of all, I try to shine as best as I can. But so social media for me is kind of a little different because I went public on social media. So I kind of just got not frustrated, but I kind of was just, learning to deal with the diagnosis, learning to accept myself and what it meant to not only live with HIV, but what were other people, like I struggled with that, like back and forth of how I feel about myself, how are people going to feel about me, and ultimately I just decided that the history of my life growing up as a kid, being teased, being bullied, there was always something that I got picked on for. So HIV felt like something, just another thing to be picked on for. And I was like, I refuse to give anybody any kind of power over me to try to use it as blackmail or whatever the case may be. And I was just like, I'm just going to be public and open to the world about it. So I kind of came out, if you will, on Facebook, and a lot of my followers now, my friends on Facebook, know me for living with HIV. And I try to share content. I try to just live my normal life, because at the end of the day, we are still all normal, regardless of this diagnosis. Obviously, we have our own mental health struggles with medication adherence and things of that nature. But I really try on social media just to show I still lead a normal life outside of the diagnosis. So just using social media to the best of my abilities. I recently, thanks to you and some other people, started dabbling in TikTok. Again, just trying to share information and figuring out what the trends are and innovative ways to share the information, because I think so many people are utilizing social media for so many things, and so many people are using social media. Why not use it so that we can try to break down some barriers and try to kill stigma as much as we can? So if I can use my platform, my followers, to put my life on a pedestal, if you will, with my diagnosis, to try to change some people's minds.
That's right, because you can reach so many people through social media. I mean, when you're walking the streets and doing that type of work, it's important, but it's so few people that you can meet. But on social media, you can touch thousands without even going outside of your door. So
Right.
I love that. So, Aisha, I wanted to know, what are some of your thoughts about intergenerational work, and what do you really need from elders in the HIV community?
For me personally, I believe that there has been a lot of changes when it comes to the intergenerational work that's being done. I previously did not feel like, we were getting or I personally was getting the direction. And I would hear those sentiments from others that, they don't feel like they're being pulled in, or lifted up. For me personally, that has changed. And I do feel like, what we need from the older generation of people living with HIV is just continue to create and build leaders, because right now, from what we see, HIV isn't going anywhere. And for women especially, it's important for us to really band together and to make sure that we're creating space, and we're also helping to create individuals that can facilitate those spaces, because there's a life cycle, and some people that are working, not to say, your time's up now, but eventually you're going to want to move on. And you should, as a leader, want to prepare folks to be ready to take the torch and do a good job for the women behind them. So for me, I feel like, that's just what we need, just a continuation of seeing people uplifting each other, sharing each other's work, and, sharing with each other information and knowledge, and not just gatekeeping and those type of things, but really. And also, this came in my spirit, but stop using the word collaborate when you just want to pick ideas from folks. Don't use the word collaborate unless you're actually intentionally ready to really collaborate and work with folks.
Oh, that's true. That gatekeeping piece, that's huge. That is huge. Kayla, what specifically do you think you need from elders in the HIV community, and how do you see intergenerational work?
Um, I think for me personally, I would just say that we need space. So, which I can say that I have been seeing that more now. I do see more young people to the front with our voices. So, that would be the one thing I would say. Just continue to be open to having young people in spaces, because we have a lot of knowledge to bring. For example, we got the age of social media, so it's a lot that we can teach the older generation on how to. They have a lot of knowledge to share with us, but we have the tools to get it out there. So if like Aisha was saying, gatekeeping. You don't have to gatekeep. We can come together, and band together and get this message out together. That's the whole point, is for us to work together as a collective whole. So when it comes down to intergenerational work, I would just say be open to us, because we're open to y'all. We're open to learn. We're open to teach. We just have to have those spaces and feel comfortable enough to do so. And what was the last part of what you said? I'm sorry.
Oh, do you already answered it, but
Okay.
it was how do you see intergenerational work?
Okay, yeah. So that those are my sentiments on it.
Thank you so much for that. And so I know that we're all living and thriving with HIV and doing this work in the Deep South. I want to know, why do you think that HIV stigma is still so prevalent in our community? In the Deep South, we do have the highest HIV transmissions rates. And I wanted to know, why do you think, Marissa, HIV stigma is so prevalent within our community still?
One of the biggest reasons I think it's still so prevalent is because a lot of I don't even know how to put those words together. I'm going to retract that. Um, I think because a lot of people are not open to talking about their status and their experiences. When I worked for the local clinic here in Fort Myers, I'm trying to remember the number. I think they treated like 1,200 patients or something like that. And I worked in the prevention department, and I was also a patient there. And when I questioned, why don't I see more people coming to the table and speaking up about their experience, it was said that out of the 1,200 patients that they treated, they could count how many people were public with their status on one hand. So I think a lot of it has to do with the fear of judgment, the stigma, the worry about what their family and friends are going to say. I think a lot of people, and I mean, I think we've all gone through this after receiving this diagnosis. You start to question your own worth and your own self-esteem. And when you can't build yourself back up from that, you worry about what your loved ones are going to say. For me personally, I dealt with the family stigma, if you will, and it wasn't because they were trying to be malicious. It was because they were uneducated. So when we don't personally take the time to educate our family and our friends, we're not able to bridge that gap, because we also don't have the self-esteem within ourselves to feel like we can do that. And I know a lot of that goes to uneducation, ignorance. I mean, when you're around the people, even that you live with, your immediate family, when you see how they talk about certain things or how they talk about certain people, you're fearful to speak up, because what are they going to say about you? And I think we should try to turn that around in a power sense, in the sense of, you are my mother, brother, sister, whoever you are, and you're talking about a person who has, whether it's HIV, diabetes, or whatever, in such a ill manner, that how are you going to react to a loved one who would want to come to you for support and guidance when they're facing something similar? We have to try to come together with being able to open up our voices and talk to try to bring change, because that's really the only way that it can happen.
Conversations definitely help to break down stigma. So, Aisha, why do you think HIV stigma is so heavily prevalent in the Deep South?
I don't know. I honestly just think it's a combination of a lot of different things. And I do believe Marissa spoke to a lot of those points. For me, I previously did a whole post on, willful ignorance, because I don't think people are always ignorant. A lot of folks are just willfully ignorant because it's more entertaining to not acknowledge the facts. You know, we see that in the memes that we see and the things that, you know, we people repeat, or the posts with the blood and the banana, you know, things like that. Or little posts like when the PPP list was going around and folks were like, well, where's the HIV list? It's like, okay, pun, what does HIV have to do with PPP? So we throwing that out. But, you know, it's just more entertaining sometimes. And people really just choose to be willfully ignorant, to be hurtful. Sometimes for a lot of people, they don't want to acknowledge realities. I remember one of the persons who actually ousted me is experiencing the same situation. And that's one of the persons that I never talk about. And I respect this person's privacy more than mine, sad to say, but this person actually was a person who ousted me. And it later came out they're also a person living with HIV. So I just think, honestly, I used to have in my head what I thought it was. But for me, I just think it's just a combination of everything. And when you add social media to the bunch and people trying to keep an image and so many other things, it's just really hard to combat stigma. At one point, I really had in my head that this was something that we could end. Can we really end stigma? But when y'all look at social media, you know, the reality of things, especially when it comes to a lot of things coming out of HIV and our advocacy, for me, I don't even always just jump on a lot of things because in my head, you know, the work that I want to do, I want it to align with what's happening for real. And so for me, it's just, you know, educating who I can, letting folks know. And people always praise me for how I respond to people because I get very nasty comments. I've been getting them ever since I started my public advocacy about 5 years ago on social media. And I don't get mad, I don't get angry because I'm good with me. And honestly, that's what I'm trying to help other women with, being good with yourself, because it's not gonna matter what the world think about you. It only matters how you feel about yourself, because people gonna talk about you. They're gonna share your status if you don't want to share it. They may find out or assume you have it because they saw you coming out of there, and now you fighting with people to fix, you know, not to get your status out. And you know, just stigma is just something for me. I don't even think we're close to ending. The realist in me is just like, girl, get your sisters together, get them proud, get them strong, so that way when somebody do come to them with some stigma, you know, that don't even resonate in you. You can't be moved by what you hear, and that's my focus.
Yeah, you're so right. When it comes to like the stigma around social media, it is so prevalent and it's like never it's like always lasting, especially those memes. Oh my goodness, I hate the memes with the banana. The one with the banana, or sometimes they'll say the Coke. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. Or ketchup. I saw the one with HIV in ketchup and I'm like, "What?" So yeah, stigma is so prevalent on social media. It's really ridiculous.
Don't forget the mosquito.
Oh yeah, in the mosquito.
We live
And
in
it's
Florida.
crazy.
We live in the South. The mosquito one, I feel like I see at least a couple times a day.
And it's crazy because everybody really knows somebody living with HIV. I think in this day and age, for the most part, even if it's not your actual family member, like for the most part, people have seen or met or heard of somebody that's living with HIV. And I have family who post those memes and then be writing my comments. I love this for you, girl.
I think that's another thing about the intergenerational work and also the long term survivor work, because a lot of folks that were elders in this work didn't come out in the age of social media. And so we have to deal with a lot of backlash when we post stuff. I know when I post content, the comment section sometimes is crazy. And I'm constantly deleting negative comments, but I know that my work is doing some sort of good. And so I want to make sure, even if it reaches one person, to help them feel stronger, like you were saying earlier, Aisha, then I've done my job. If I've allowed one woman to be free from the chains of stigma, then I've done my job. So Kayla, I wanted to know, what advice would you give to a newly diagnosed woman or girl who was confused and uncertain about what to do and what to expect about living with HIV?
I would first say that living with HIV, I guess you have to take it a day at a time. I think the first part of, I guess, moving forward with it for me, and I can only speak to personal experience to be able to give advice on, is acceptance within, right? And just knowing that your status does not define you. And that there are so many other things in life, you feel what I'm saying, that we're going to be trialed by. There are going to be other obstacles, and HIV is not the biggest thing. Although at the time I understand it might feel like it, but I promise you there are so many other obstacles and hurdles that you will come at that HIV will be the last thing on your mind. And so you just have to understand that your diagnosis, receiving that diagnosis, is a moment in time, and those initial feelings, not to say that they won't ever come up again, but as you continue to live with it, it gets easier to process and understand, and you realize your worth, and you realize who you are, and you know what you bring to the table, and you understand that you deserve love just like anybody else. You deserve all the things everybody else does. And so I would just say to take every day as it comes, not to be too hard on yourself. Work on forgiving yourself first, because a lot of times, and not just with HIV, but healing in general, for me, I know personally, the first step in my healing was forgiving myself for the situation I was in, or sometimes you have to forgive other people because sometimes you won't get that from other people. So start with forgiving yourself first. And then from there, like I said, just take it one day at a time. Don't be too hard on yourself. Show yourself some grace, and everything is going to be okay. Life is still going to go on. You're still going to have different things that you succeed in, different accomplishments. Life is so much more life for you to live, that don't let HIV keep you stuck in one moment and keep you from living your life and going after your dreams and stuff, because at the end of the day, this is just one more thing that's going to build your character. It's going to open up more doors for you, more experiences. You're going to meet new people, learn new things, and you're going to be able to be a light for somebody else. So allow this test right now to be a part of your testimony, and don't allow it to break you down, because it seems like it's breaking you down, but it's essentially going to build you up as you continue to go and grow through this situation. So that would be my advice to any young girls or any women that are newly diagnosed or just are struggling right now within. Keep fighting, keep pushing. You have a team of women on this panel right here that are all open. We're all public, but we also respect confidentiality. So if you reach out to any one of us, you have our support. We have different resources to give you. You're not by yourself. And so I would just say, keep holding on and use us. We're here. So that'll be my advice and my take.
That was so beautiful. That was so beautiful. You are so right. Yes, this is not a death sentence. And you definitely have an entire support of sisters that are waiting and willing to assist with anything. So I'm going to throw that question over to you, Aisha. What do you tell newly diagnosed women or girls?
Oh, I mean, pretty much the same. I feel like Kayla really hit so many, good points. For me personally, I have a support group down in South Florida for women living with HIV. And right now it is a little bit stagnant, and I could do a little bit better than that. But one of the most important things for me, especially when I initially started and we were meeting, was making sure that these women were really able to share space with people and that it was convenient for them. So, I mean, not just people, other women living with HIV, and that it was convenient for them. And also making sure that I was able to get them somewhere like Positive Living Conference. And I was able to do that. And for me, I just think for people that are living with HIV and are newly diagnosed, one of the best things that you could do for yourself is connecting to someone else living with HIV, whether it's in a support group or you find somebody online, or you ask your doctor or case manager to connect you. And the only reason I say that is because every time I meet someone, they're always in fear of sharing their status, and it consumes them of about their family finding out. And it's not even just about strangers. They're talking about their family, their mother or sister or brother, and then they have so many other things that compound and attach to that till they start beating and breaking themselves down. And oftentimes what I hear from people after they've been through all of that is, oh, I wish I met you when I first was diagnosed. And I'm always thinking, like, why aren't case managers, why aren't doctors like telling folks or connecting folks to services that are not just related to care and treatment, but for their own personal growth, even if it's immediately sending them off to get Ryan White so they can get the mental health services that they need. A lot of doctors don't even connect their patients to that stuff. So if you don't even have a case manager, you're not even aware of everything that's available to you. But for me, that's what I would say, in addition to everything that Kayla's already said, because, you definitely can live, you can thrive, and you'll be mad at yourself at how much time you spent not living, not enjoying life when you do get to that point. So that's what I got.
Girl, where were you when I was newly diagnosed? I so needed to hear that when I was first diagnosed. I so needed to hear, like, this is not the end. You'll receive so much other stuff and do so many other things. And HIV will just be one little small part of your day when you take your meds, and that's it. So I want to hear from you, Marissa. How do you think having a social support system like your friends and your family has helped you get into care, stay in care? And what about people that don't have that support system? How do we support them in connecting them to care?
Okay. Definitely different parts to that question. So I might need you to say the second part afterwards. But I think for me personally, I expected the negative reactions when I went public with my status on Facebook. And it was the complete opposite to my surprise. But then I also saw that I was met with comments, oh, I had no idea, you would never know. And of course, that just speaks to the level of education that we need to do with people. There is no face to HIV. I mean, looking at the three of us right now, we all look different. Our hairstyles are different, our tones are different. So there's no face to HIV. But I think when it comes to just having had that support, I mean, even knowing I had the support, I still struggled with mental health issues. I still struggled with depression. I still couldn't figure out if I was taking my pills the right way. I still attempted to take my own life. There's only so much that family support can do. And I think for me personally, it was because while they were supportive and telling me that they love me and that, they got my back 10 times over, they couldn't relate and they couldn't understand what I was going through, what I was facing. So I, for almost 2.5 years, kept myself in a unhealthy, toxic situation with the only other person that I knew who had HIV, which was the person who I contracted HIV from. So I think it's really important to be able to find a tribe, to find your sisterhood, your brotherhood, your family, whatever you want to call it, because they're really going to be the people who can understand most what you're going through. But because they've also had the lived experience, they can try to help guide you or provide advice in the best way possible. I think Aisha hit it on the head just a few minutes ago. Providers, unfortunately, are not doing much to connect pieces for mental health, for support. I know that I've personally gone to some organizations and provided a business card. I legit had business cards for HIV purposes made because I want people to know that there's resources out there and there are people in the community living with HIV that you can talk to. And I handed that stuff out over 2 years ago, and I've maybe had like one person call me. And I don't know if that's because the information isn't being passed out, if people just aren't comfortable. But I think when it comes to having that support, I think it's nice to know that your family doesn't judge you for the diagnosis, but I think it's more so important to be able to connect with people who understand what you're going through because of their lived experience with it.
Mhm. Definitely. It looks like you chomping at the bit to get into this conversation, Aisha. So go ahead and tell me, why do you think having a social support system and really helps you engage into care?
I wasn't though. Look, I'm over here mommying and doing this at the same time, so I'm trying to give eyes over the side of the computer and still, be here. But as far as how do you think having a social support, well, I guess having family or friends be a social support system? My family and my friends were other people living with HIV. I always say that's my first family, and I do actually love my family, but I literally grew up going to these camps, spending time with them, and that family right there is what always helped me to get back into care. Not my personal family. They and like Marissa, they would be the same way. Get that support, but I also would get a lot of negative from my family too, in hurtful ways. When it was convenient to be hurtful, and that's always stuck with me. And I love my family today. I still interact with family who has said some things to me, but I never forget, you know? And so for me, my first family has always been able to navigate me. I had a really good doctor for a long time who, even when I was pregnant with my daughter, and she knew for years I wasn't taking my meds. She knew. She's like, you're not doing this. I'm 17 at the time, pregnant. And she's like, look, Aisha, we got to do something different. And she bought a woman living with HIV in there to talk to me. And she was a peer. And I didn't even know about those jobs at the time, but she was just a person living with HIV who they kind of had on staff to just kind of support other people. But CDTC's always been ahead of their time, always been innovative and making sure that, the children that they service living with HIV were just always met with love and care. And for me, having my grandparents or parents in the room throughout my time, I wouldn't always share all that I needed to share to get what I needed from them. But overall, I just say all of this to say it's just so important to be among people you can relate to. It's just so different. It's just so different.
Having a chosen family is definitely, especially as a person living with HIV, is huge. I know for me, in my own personal experience, it's been a lot of women living with HIV who have been instrumental in a lot of my personal and professional development. And they have really helped love on me when I didn't have the strength to love myself. And so I definitely think getting a social support network of other women or men or TGNC folks that understand your experience, understand your diagnosis, and are able to lift you up when you need that support. So definitely. And so we are about to close, and I hate this because I just love talking to all of y'all. If anyone has any questions for the ladies, please put them in the chat. I have one last question. I know we are all young women living and thriving with HIV, working in this field. We are all HIV activists who are all doing our part to help end the HIV epidemic. But I want to know from each one of you, who are you outside of this work? And I'm going to start with Kayla. Who are you outside of this work?
Outside of this, I am a poet. I am a lover of nature. I like to read. I like to write. And I like to learn. So outside of this, I'm just a free spirit, very adventurous. I like traveling. I like eating new foods. I'm just a ball of fun. I like to have fun. I like to enjoy life. So outside of this specifically, though, I am a poet. But I feel like, this work is integral with my life. So outside of this, I'm still an activist, like in my everyday life. But yeah, that's me outside of this work.
You are definitely a lot of fun and a lot of laughs. Aisha?
I resonate with that, Kayla, because outside of this work, it's funny to think about myself outside of this work, because there was once a time I couldn't picture myself in this work. I was just so separated from my status, and that was just what I wanted for myself. And so now that I'm into this work, it is so hard to see myself outside of it. But if I had to say, who am I outside of this work? I am the girl that's going to get up and go and travel and be gone. And I like to go out and have fun and eat. And sometimes I post things on my advocacy social media, and I'm like, oh, wait, hold on. I'm sorry, y'all. That's me. So, yeah, I guess I'm the same way like Kayla. I just really love enjoying life. I'm intentional about making sure I enjoy my moments. I take myself out to dinner, lunch, whatever. I watch people look at me. I smile back, wave, say a hi, because this probably new to you. You never saw nobody enjoying themselves. So yeah, that's just me outside of advocacy. I'm outside of HIV, but just still in it at the same time.
And what's the last place you traveled to? Because you said you're a travel enthusiast. What's the last place?
Yes, the last place I actually traveled to was what is it? Quintana Roo I think that's how you say it, Quintana Roo. But I'll be in Myrtle Beach this Friday, and then when I come back from there next week, I'll be getting right on a plane to Aruba. So I took a little break. I don't like the cold month. So during the cold time, I don't really go to many places. But I did go to Mexico, and it was still cold being in that water. So whew.
What? It was cold in Mexico? That's
In the water, yes.
So who are you outside of this work, Marissa?
Outside of this work, I like to say I'm a daughter, a friend, a fur mom, all that good stuff. But definitely like Kayla and Aisha, I like to travel. I love to try new foods, just experience new things. My personality says I'm a color yellow, if you know anything about personality tests. So I'm very much like a people person. I thrive in places where I can be around people, supporting people, and just, loving on people and their gifts and supporting them in whatever it is that they're doing. But I'm an entrepreneur, so I have my hands in tons of stuff. I have my own business. I do contract work for hosting and Instagram TV series and all that stuff. I definitely am not shy of the camera, and I'm not shy to have a microphone in my hand. I don't know if I would call myself the life of the party, but I definitely know how to help people, get out of that little shy zone, if you will.
You are definitely the life of the party. Between you and Kayla, y'all are the life of the party.
I feel like we all need a trip. Like, we all like to travel. We all like food. Like, I feel like this needs to happen.
It does. It needs to be one.
Yes.
So we had one question in the chat, and the chat question was, do we find difficulty dating? And I'm gonna start off with Kayla, because Kayla look like she's about to
Listen
right now. So tell us.
Let me tell y'all, dating with HIV is so colorful. Okay, when I tell you the experiences that I've had, though, just meeting different people, honestly, it's been a learning experience. It's been a growth experience. It's been fun dating with HIV, if I'm honest, because for one, I've just gotten to see how different people think, different perspectives, right? And because you're inside this bubble of knowledge and what you know, to see what other people know or the lack thereof is quite entertaining sometimes, honestly. And so, yeah, I would just say that difficulties, no. I mean, we're all beautiful women. Like Marissa said, HIV has no face. And so my face card is very good. I have no problem dating. Yeah, it's fun. And it's also interesting, y'all, to hear, like, sometimes I might gauge somebody and just be like, hey, like World AIDS Day, I'm just gonna give y'all a little story time real quick, and I know we gotta be off, but this guy I was talking to just kind of gauged them, would you date somebody who has HIV? Oh baby, he gave me a whole synopsis on why he would not, he just wouldn't do it. And I was like, okay, cool. So I fell off from talking to him. It's like, why you stop talking to me? I was like, well, everything that you said is in direct conflict with who I am, so this isn't gonna work. He was like, oh man, I didn't know, everything that he had said, basically, he was reneging it, basically, like, nah, but you different though. But it's you though, not you though. And so it's been fun. It's been funny. Also, dealing with rejection is real because it's not always, roses and lollipops. But that rejection, I also feel like, has made me know my worth more, because you realize that you deserve love, and that if this person is not willing to accept or doesn't have the capacity to, that's okay. But you have to understand that you're worth having that, and to move forward and know that if that person isn't it, that means that that's not the person God has for you, and find peace with that. And so I found a lot of peace and self-worth in rejection and acceptance. So that would be my experience in dating. But yeah, it's been fun overall.
What about you, Marissa?
So I feel like, first of all, Kayla, thank you for all of that. Yes. But I feel like at one point I became the girl who was living with HIV that talked about nothing but dating. Because I was just at that point in my life, like right before the pandemic, I want to say, or like during the pandemic. I don't really remember. I feel like time has just like escaped me. But I've rejection is inevitable. It's going to happen. But I feel like every time you get the no, it's just one step closer to your yes. I wrote a blog for the Well Project, A Girl Like Me, that was titled, Why Are You Dating If You Have HIV? Because literally somebody said to me, why are you dating if you have HIV? So, that whole thing kind of spiraled a conversation. But, dating is what you make it. If you allow somebody to talk negatively to you because of your diagnosis, you definitely got to know what your worth is. But dating hasn't been difficult. I've kind of taken myself out of the pool right now. I'm still open about my status. My profiles say, because I have all the social media dating apps and stuff like that. All my profiles say I'm living with HIV, but you'd be surprised. People don't read. They look at pictures only and be like, oh, hey, beautiful. Can I get your number? Well, did you read my profile first? No, let me go look at it. And then they come back, and then, some go ghost. Some say, oh, that doesn't matter. But some will, some won't. So, well, who's next? Like, that's my motto in life right now. But yeah, that's my dating situation.
Rejection is real, and you and Kayla both talked about that for a little bit. But yeah, it's so real, and I definitely feel like what both of you all stated was so true. You have to know your self-worth and love yourself enough to be like, okay, and next, because there's billions of people out here that will love you for who you are and everything that comes along with you. So Aisha, what about this dating situation? Come on now.
For me personally, I will say dating used to be difficult prior to me being public, only because my status had already kind of been making its ways, being or family and what was crazy is if I had a cousin who liked somebody I liked or that person liked me, they're telling them immediately. It was coming out. It was my yes, it's coming out. That information is coming out. And so, I always kind of went back and forth because I literally had one time where I had a friend that went and got tested for me just so I could say that I wasn't positive, so I can have something just to say that I wasn't. We looked alike, and she took my ID. And yes, she did. She went out of the closet on Sunrise Boulevard. I took her there. I didn't drop her off, but I waited on her outside, and she took my ID inside, got tested just so I get one of those papers to say I was negative. And that was it was a difficult time for me. So in that point when I didn't know who I was, and it wasn't about being public or private, it's just that when I became public, that was when I kind of just like own myself then. Like it really just happened. Like it was just something overcame me. But yeah, it was difficult. It was hard. And but when I did, I guess, start accepting myself and was public and dating, it actually started to become a really good thing, because prior to that, I would date people and I would be with them, and I realized that acceptance came with a lot of exceptions, and I was the exception to the rule at first, but then you know it was as if I'm not the exception anymore. They're the exception because now there's a person that would be with me, and now I got to deal with that. So dating when I was so unsure of myself was the worst thing. And honestly, I don't think anybody, HIV or not, if you're unsure of yourself, if you're at a place where you are already beating yourself down, you honestly really don't even have no business dating, because the advantage that people can take over you is so big. And when it comes to your mental, emotional health that's connected to this person that says, I love you, but then turns around and like gives you, some words that literally can just break you down. It just as quick as you standing there. So yeah, it was difficult. But me knowing myself now, yeah, I don't have a problem with rejection. Even in my past when I was dating and I was going through that, no, those people that I was actually dating who accepted me would always reject me first. And what that has actually taught me now, and since I have known myself, I don't talk to anybody who rejects me first. If you reject me first, you cannot have an opportunity to come back. Because for me, I've realized how that played with those past people. Every person who rejected me first somehow threw in my face my status. It would eventually come out. So for me, if I don't meet you with that open mind, we don't even have no reason talking, and I'm okay with rejection. I'm okay with you not liking me. One of the most requested classes I teach is dating with disclosure, because people like the way I talk about language and talking about what people like and dislike. We all have our things that we meet somebody and you're just not talking to them, whatever it is. And for many people, HIV is one of those things. And for me, accepting that that's your thing and being okay with that is what made me okay with dating today. And I feel empowered dating. And I love dating. And I love people taking me out to dinner and to lunch. And I love dating people who are proud to be sitting with me at the table. And if somebody walks by and knows who I am, they don't got no problem. They're not trying to duck up behind nothing. So dating for me is magnificent.
I'm not gonna lie, I live my best life. And I'm just like y'all, I live my best life. I do not allow my diagnosis to impact me in any way, impact my dating life in any way. Um, I haven't gotten many rejections because we all know that folks folks are more, especially in our generation, they know a little bit more about HIV, especially since now you have it on commercials and on TV a lot. And so folks are a lot more better about understanding HIV. And when I do receive a no, I'm like, 9 times out of 10, I wasn't really interested in the person anyway. And I hate when family members out folks, because that's how I first got outed, was by one of my cousins, and it was extremely crazy. And it definitely was someone that was trying to date me, but she liked the guy, and I didn't even like men, don't like men really. And so it was so crazy. But definitely dating and navigating dating, even if you're not living with HIV, as a woman of color, is extremely difficult, especially in this day and age. So I appreciate all y'all for answering that question. And Marissa, did you have anything else to add to it?
I did, yeah. Because I know we all touched on rejection, right? But acceptance is also very real. So I wanted to make sure that that was a point that was honed in. You are going to have people that reject you, but there are also going to be people who accept you outside of the diagnosis because you're more than your diagnosis, and they see past that diagnosis. So I just wanted to make sure, to the person who asked that question, or somebody who may watch this later that is living with HIV and is questioning about dating, yes, rejection is going to be inevitable, but there are going to be true, genuine people who want to get to know you for you outside of your diagnosis.
I think a theme of this is just really, it's all based in where you are. Because in all honesty, I don't think it really had anything to do with my HIV. I remember when I was sharing my status, I'm crying. How some you ain't gonna accept my status if somebody telling you they got HIV and they crying. So now you already making me feel like this is something I need to be worried about. And I had to learn that too. Like how you delivering this message plays a key part. Like you look like you don't even want to share, like you scared or you snuck around or did something to kind of go around it and then kind of like pop it out the box. Like I used to be all type of weird ways to disclose. I used to be extra. But yeah, I really do just believe it has a lot to do with where you are, because the person I am today, I don't really really necessarily meet people that not really open-minded, but I guess it's just that where I'm meeting folks at, where I am mentally. And I know previously when I was attracting people, it was like I was broken attracting somebody else that was broken. So and I noticed that as well, where I was personally also played a part in the people I allowed, because even some of the things they would say, I would think like, why would you let this person do a U-turn with what they just said, what they said a month ago about people, living with HIV. So that was growth for me, because those were things I started recognizing in myself. Like you have to grow, you have to want more, you have to be willing to meet the type of people, or grow to be able to meet the type of people who can receive and care for you in the way that you need.
And safety is real, y'all. So as women living with HIV, when you're disclosing your status, please make sure you're in a safe location, that other people have your location, and that you're doing it in a safe way, because violence against women living with HIV is a real thing. And it's double the national average of other women that are experiencing domestic violence or intimate partner violence. So definitely make sure that you are staying safe, because you just never know. And so I just want to thank each and every one of you all. If y'all could go around and tell us, the audience, where they can find you on social media so that they can stay connected, because I'm pretty sure they will want to, because this has been an amazing discussion. So go ahead and start with us, Aisha. Tell the folks where they can find you.
So my Facebook is my name, Aisha, Ieshia Scott, and my Instagram and my Twitter are both positively pre. So positively PPRE_.
Marissa?
So on Facebook, you can find me, my name, Marissa Gonzalez, 2 S's. You can find me on Instagram, RIZZA813, I believe. And then I don't have a Twitter, but like I said earlier, I'm starting to dabble in TikTok. So if you want to follow me on TikTok, it's Rizza, RIZZA_G813. I didn't make up the name. My niece forced me to get a Twitter, and that was the name that she put. So we just run with it.
And Kayla.
And I'm sorry. Yeah, so my name is Kayla Quimbley on all of my social platforms. So my first and my last name, and you should be able to find me.
Well, thank y'all so much for being here. And thank you so much to the audience for participating and asking questions in the chat, and for, really being here to listen to what we had to say. And thank you so much, ladies, for lending your voices. And thank you for all the work that you do to help end the HIV epidemic in the Deep South and all across the nation. It is so appreciated.
I just realized I gave the wrong name for Instagram. It's actually, I had to look at it because I was like, I really don't think that's right. It's Rizza, RIZZA0807. Sorry, guys. Thank you so much for this conversation. Appreciate it.
Thank y'all for being here. Thank you so much for being here. Y'all have an amazing night.
You too. Thank you.
You too. Thank